Hello, everybody. Frankenstein. Let's knock this out. 4 chapters left. We'll do 2 and 2. Chapter 19. A Joyous Wedding. On the day of our departure from Ireland, I received a letter from Elizabeth. She reassured me of her love, but offered to release me from my promise to marry her if I no longer wanted to after so many years. This certainly wasn't true. I loved her as much as ever and wanted nothing more in life than to marry her. But her letter reminded me of the threat I'd put out of my mind. The monster's threat. I will be with you on your wedding night. I put the letter down and thought, if that is the night the monster has chosen for my death, so be it. There will be no deadly struggle between us. If the fiend wins, I'll be dead, and so at peace. If I win, the fiend will be dead, and I'll be a free man. I also decided that on the day after our wedding, I would confess my terrible secret to Elizabeth, for I didn't want to have any secrets from her, no matter how terrible they were. As soon as my father and I arrived back in Geneva, we began making plans for our wedding. At first, Elizabeth was overjoyed at the news, but she soon began to worry about my continuing fits of depression and grief. I tried to explain to her that something was troubling me deeply, and I hoped she'd be comforted when I added, I don't want to burden you with these troubles now, because now we're so busy making our wedding plans. But I promised to tell you everything the day after you become my wife. During the week preceding our wedding, I began making plans to defend myself against the fiend. I carried a dagger and pistols with me at all times, and was always on my guard against any trickery. As the wedding day neared, I became calmer and began to treat the threat as a delusion, not important enough for me to worry about. The ceremony was performed at our family home, with a large party following it. Every moment of the wedding brought great happiness to Elizabeth and me, and to my father as well. We planned to spend our honeymoon at a villa that Elizabeth had inherited from her family. It sat on the shores of a beautiful lake in northern Italy, Lake Como. We would be crossing Lake Geneva first and spending our wedding night in an inn in the town of Evian before starting our land journey down to Italy. The beauty of that ride across the lake on a glorious summer day with snowy Mount Blanc in the background filled us both with joy. But then I noticed that joy was replaced by a look of fear in Elizabeth's eyes. I took her hand in mine and smiled down at her, trying hard to reassure her that everything was fine, that I was happy and proud to have her as my wife. But in my heart, I wondered if she was dreading the confession of my terrible secret, the secret I'd promised to reveal the following day. That following day was actually only a few hours away, for the sun was setting as we landed on the shores of Evian. That sunset seemed to bring my own fears back to me, and I heard that horrible voice again, I shall be with you on your wedding night. All right. Chapter 20. A wedding night victim. As night fell, a heavy rain began to beat down on the little inn. From the window of our sitting room, we watched the wind and rain kick up the waves in the lake. The eerie gusts and the pounding storm filled me with 1,000 fears once again. My only comfort was the pistol hidden inside my shirt. Elizabeth silently watched the terror build up on my face until she finally asked, "What are you so terribly frightened of, my dear Victor?" "It's only this dreadful night, my love," I tried to reassure her. "Once it passes, everything will be fine." Then I realized that if the fiend and I were to confront each other that night, I couldn't let Elizabeth witness it, so I begged her, "Please, my dear, go into our bedroom and lie down to rest. You've had a tiring day. I'll join you shortly." Once Elizabeth had left the sitting room, I walked through every inch of every hallway of the inn, inspecting every corner where the fiend might hide, but there was no trace of him. I was beginning to believe that some real stroke of luck had prevented him carrying out his threat, when I suddenly heard a dreadful scream coming from our bedroom. In that instant, I realized the true meaning of the monster's threat. I rushed into the bedroom, only to be frozen at the doorway by the horrifying sight before me. There, thrown across the bed, was my dear, sweet Elizabeth, unmoving and lifeless. Her head was hanging down over the side of the bed, with her hair partly hiding a pale face, now frozen in a twisted mask of terror. I felt the blood leave my body, and I collapsed to the floor, unconscious. When I came to, I was on a sofa in our sitting room, surrounded by the horror-stricken people from the inn. I jumped up and ran back to our bedroom, where Elizabeth's body had been placed in a more peaceful position on a bed. Her face and neck had been covered over with a cloth. I tore the cloth away and took her in my arms. While she appeared to be only asleep, her cold, stiff body confirmed that she was dead. That and the murderous black finger marks on her neck. As I lifted my eyes in agony to appeal to the heavens, I discovered a hideous, grinning face at the open window. That evil grin seemed to be mocking me as a fiendish finger pointed at my dear Elizabeth's body. "I have had my revenge, O master," he cackled hoarsely. "I am here, as I swore I would be, on your wedding night. I have taken away from you all your hopes for happiness, just as you took away mine." I rushed towards the window, pulling the pistol from my shirt as I ran. I fired off several shots, but he was much too quick. Leaping from window, he ran towards the lake and dove into the water. The shots from my pistol had brought a crowd into the room. We rushed to the lake, and while some spread out in boats with nets, others searched the woods nearby. Many hours later, we were forced to give up the search. The murderer had escaped. Utterly exhausted, I returned to the inn. There was nothing more I could do for Elizabeth, but if the fiend were planning to harm my family, I had to return home immediately. That's the end of chapter 2. 2 more chapters to go. Let's take a break and I'll be right back.